hello everyone, and welcome to the college football version of Proline. It's the 2016 Big 12 season we're going to look at today. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Sadi, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services. And we're going to take a look at each team, some starters, revenge games, and betting trends, all from a Vegas angle. Before we start, if you want to get free plays sent via text right to your cell phone each day, just text GAME, G-A-M-E, to 25827, or you can go to jimwins.com. Before we get to the Big 12, Jeff, your handicapping style, there's all different kinds out there. People look at matchups, statistical trends. How would you classify yourself?
Well, it depends on the sport. In the NBA, I use everything in every sport, but in the NBA, I focus most on trends. And in college basketball, it's more situational, such as scheduling and things like that. And in baseball, it's mostly stats. As far as football, though, I use everything. I take everything into account: the schedule situation, the stats, trends, revenge, look ahead, let down games. So I put everything all together in football, and that's pretty much the way I handicap. And obviously I've done very well. I've done LVSS 17 years, and altogether I've been handicapping for this is my 23rd year. So everything's going well, and that's pretty much how I do it, John.
Yeah, and your top play is a blockbuster. You don't release those very often. A 38-19 run going back the last 2 years. So Jeff's top plays are consistent, as well as all his plays in different sports. I know for a fact that he puts the homework in. And you can find his plays every day at jimfeist.com in every sport. All right, let's take a look at the Big 12 for 2016 football season. It was actually a three-team race with Oklahoma at 8-1, nudging ahead of Oklahoma State at 7-2, along with TCU. And the Sooners beat them both 58-23 over the Cowboys and 30-29 over TCU. It was a 19-point favorite. That game went up from something like 10-19 because of injuries, and they barely won that game. But still, that was the team to beat last year, Oklahoma. Big 12 has made 7 title game appearances in the BCS era, with Oklahoma and Texas each claiming championships going back the last 16 years. The problem is no Big 12 team in the last 6 seasons has reached there. So for this year, how about Art Briles and Baylor? Do they have a shot to make it?
Well, they always have a shot with that coach and the way he recruits. They only return 5 on offense, 5 on defense. But like a lot of the top teams, it's not really rebuilding. It's mostly just retooling, and it doesn't make much difference how many starters they lose. They just plug them in with new talent every year. But this year they lost on the offensive line. Baylor lost 4 players. They also lost 4 players on the defensive line. So this is one year where there could be a challenge there. But still, I'm not too worried about it. There's a quarterback situation. Seth Russell is back. He was injured. He's one of the many Baylor quarterbacks who's been injured lately, but he's back. And also Jarrett Stidham, of course, who filled in last year. Stidham actually had a better spring, but we'll see what happens there. But it's probably going to be Seth Russell. And senior center Kyle Fuller is the only offensive line starter back. They have the loaded wide receiver as usual, Katie Cannon, Ishmael Zamora. And defense, last year they were 80th in points allowed, 28. But then again, they're playing the Big 12, and they have that kind of offense where the defense is on the field a lot, so that's not too bad considering everything else. The defensive line, though, did lose its top 3 players, so it could be a problem. Their linebacking, they're strong at linebacker, and the secondary, it could be a problem too. So right now, we have to wait and see as far how these new players shape up here with Baylor. But as I said, the way they recruit there and the type of players they recruit, it shouldn't be a huge problem. Last year, Baylor was an underdog 2 years ago. They beat Oklahoma in that situation, 48-14. And also they were an underdog against North Carolina because of all the injuries, and they won that game 49-38. They have another thing with Baylor. They usually schedule these easy non-conference games. This year they start off with Northwestern State, SMU, and they're at Rice, so they should start out 5-0. Well, depending on what they do in the conference, but they should start at least 3-0. They have a big revenge game at Texas, October 29th. They lost that game last year, 23-17, as a 21-point favorite. This is amazing. They're on a 34-17 run over the total, even though the totals of their games are usually in the 70s or so. So they just can't make the number high enough for this team. But I look for Baylor to be strong again, as usual. They should win. Last year they won 10 games. They should do that again. They 9 or 10 games this year, John.
Well, what do you make Baylor at Rice? About 50?
Yeah, well, it's a road game. Then it might be a little bit less than that. So,
total of 100.
How about Northwestern State? What do you think of that?
Off the board. That's what I do with it. I'll take a look at the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Boy, what a season that Mike Gundy had last year. 10 wins, 3 losses. Terrific team. 7-2 in the Big 12. Didn't cover numbers, though. 5-7-1 against the spread. However, they're really loaded with returning talent. 10 starters back on offense, 8 on defense. No team in the Big 12 has more returning talent than these Cowboys. What an offense last year, 39.5 points per game. They're ranked 14th in the nation, 353 yards passing per game. You want to talk about Baylor? How about Oklahoma State? 7th in the nation in passing. But that was an afterthought for the ground game, which was 114th in the nation. But still, they were terrific at scoring points, and they will be again because they have the junior quarterback Mason Rudolph back. 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 70 yards passing, and he leads the team. You got the entire offensive line back for the Cowboys. Plenty of talent in the backfield, too. Chris Carson, 517 yards, and Rennie Childs back, although they both average just 3.9 yards per carry. But this team throws the ball first, and they will do it well again because it's a deep wide receiver rotation. Junior wide receiver James Washington is back, just over 1,000 yards receiving, 20.5 yards per reception this guy had. 6'2 senior Jawan Seals is back, 321 yards, and 6'4 senior Marcel Aitman, 716 yards, 17 yards per carry. So they're just going to dazzle Big 12 secondary. All those guys were significant parts of the receiving corps, so this offense is just loaded once again. The defense wasn't that bad, although they're 86th in the nation in points allowed, 29 points per game, but they are loaded with experience for this year. The defensive line returns intact with junior Vincent Taylor and senior Milwaukee Male, and 3 starting linebackers return too. The secondary looks fine too. You got the senior cornerback Ashton Lampkin and the junior safety Trey Flowers. So this defense should be better, and the offense will be just as potent. The schedule, got to believe they're going to be starting 3-0, all home games. The only tough one would be Pitt. They do have to play at Baylor, though, September 24th, a big early game. And their first loss last year after a 10-0 start was to this Baylor team, 45-35. So that's a big game and a revenge game. The Cowboy road games at Kansas, Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma. They get Texas at home, and West Virginia and Texas Tech also at home. So really, all in all, this looks like another 10-win team again. If you like to play totals, 8-5 run over the total. Yes, I can see that trend continuing again. It's going to be a very potent Cowboy offense, and they're going to win a lot of games. All right, Jeff. The other team in Oklahoma, the Sooners, might have something to say about who's the best team in the state. So how do the Sooners look?
They're looking pretty good. They're last year 11-2 straight up, 9-4 against the spread. Returned 7 on offense, 7 on defense. Their offense last year were 4th in the country, 43.5 points per game. They were 17th in passing, 22nd in rushing. Senior quarterback Baker Mayfield is back, 36 TDs, 7 interceptions. Completed 68% of his passes. They're loaded at running back. Samaj P. Ryan, remember him when he had that record-breaking game a couple years ago. Plus, they have Joe Mixon back there and Rodney Anderson. And wide receiver, Dede Brestbrook, and tight end Mark Andrews. So the offense looks great for Oklahoma. No problem. Is their defense? Last year they were 28th in the country. The linebacking core returns only 1 starter. So there could be a problem with the pass rush there. The secondary is fine with junior cornerback Jordan Thomas, junior safety Steve Parker. So Oklahoma, looks good this year. Their last 10 seasons, they're 58-10 at home, 32-28 against the spread. They're on a 29-20 run over the total. And 6 out of the first 7 games this year are pretty tough, though. You have to give them credit. They play on a tough schedule. They open at Houston, and week 3 they have the Ohio State game at home, and then they're at TCU, but they do get Baylor and Oklahoma State at home. So it's a tough schedule for Oklahoma, and if they can run the table here, they're definitely in the 14 playoff. They have that big revenge game October 8th against Texas, where they inexplicably lost last year 24-17 as a 17-point favorite. That's one game to watch as a revenge situation. So Oklahoma is a national title contender as far as I'm concerned. They can win, and obviously could win the Big 12.
All right. Well, I'll take a look at the Texas Longhorns because Charlie Strong begins his 3rd year here, and I got to wonder if there's some heat on him because a couple of disappointing seasons. Last year, more injuries, bad quarterback play. They stumbled 5-7, a losing record in the conference, 5-7 against the spread. There's some hope because some changes have been made. First of all, offense has 7 starters back. The defense has 8 starters back. But the defense, which is strong suit, and was good 2 years ago, boy, it really fell off the charts last year. They gave up 49 to Texas Tech, 50 to TCU, 38 to West Virginia, and 45 to Cal. So there wasn't a lot that went well. Starting with the offense, 83rd in the country in scoring, 26.4 points per game, and it was completely one-dimensional. They were 17th in the nation in rushing, 224 yards per game, horrible passing attack, ranked 122nd. And they have the senior quarterback Tyron Swoops back. I can't imagine him starting, as he's been there a couple of years and hasn't really produced. Sophomore quarterback Jared Hurd is back. 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, thrown in as a freshman, had over 1,200 yards. And they still have sophomore quarterback Kay Loxley. This guy was a former 4-star recruit, drafted or went to Florida State originally, and has transferred to this school and is available. They have to find something new on offense. On the field, they've already made it off the field because they have a new offensive coordinator in Sterling Gilbert. This guy comes right from Baylor, working with Art Briles in those spread attacks. So we're going to see new look on this Texas offense, and boy, they need it. They need to score some more points. There's some talent back, but it's still young. Wide receiver sophomore John Burt had 457 yards. He was the leading receiver. And then junior wide receiver Amonte Foreman is back. Just 182 yards, but he did average 16.5 yards per catch. The offensive line is very good and experienced. 4 starters are back, and they have sophomore running back Chris Warren. This guy had 470 yards, 6.6 yards per carry. So that great Texas ground game you saw last year should be just as good again if they want to go for it. But, of course, they want to open up the passing game more. And then there's the defense, which we started talking about. Finished 90th in the nation in points allowed, 30.3 points per game. Really struggled badly. 453 total yards. And how about this? 219 yards rushing allowed per game. That was worse than UNLV. That just doesn't happen at the University of Texas. So they better produce. And the talent is there to produce. Now, they do lose some guys up front, but they have a very good junior linebacker in Anthony Wheeler. Sophomore defensive end Charles Omanahu is back. And then you got the sophomore linebacker in Malik Jefferson, who's a big recruit coming out of college. Was pretty good last year, but he's here as a sophomore with a year under his belt. So the defense should be much better than last year and could be a strength of the team. But boy, don't forget how bad they were last year. Now the schedule for the Longhorns, no favors here as they're going to open up hosting Notre Dame. Revenge game as they lost 38-3 at South Bend last year. And then the road games, a revenge game at Cal, where they lost 45-44 last year. And then some tough road games, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas Tech. And at home, they get Baylor and West Virginia. Now, they have a very good spread mark the last 11 years, 74-66-1 against the spread. That's kind of ancient history, as they had a losing spread mark last year. And the way that I look at them, with their quarterback question in flux and the new playbook being brought in, maybe a team that's going to be good under the total. I think defense is going to be vastly improved, and they're on a 17-9 run under the total as it is, and strong suit here is defense. I can see this team being a good look under the total. In fact, you mentioned that Oklahoma game where they hold the Sooners to 17 points. Okay, that was one of their great defensive performances, one of the few last year. So they're capable of doing that. I think they'll be a pretty good defensive team worth a look under the total. All right, how about TCU? Is there more stability with a program like the Frogs?
Well, with Gary Patterson, there's always stability. He's one of the best coaches in the country. They only return 3 on offense and 8 on defense, but still with Patterson, they'll be in good shape. Last year they were 11-2, 7-6 against the spread. They were also on an 18-8 against the spread run the last 2 seasons. Sophomore quarterback Foster Sawyer, he'll step in. He had last year in limited action, 2 TDs, 3 interceptions, 155 yards. They also have junior running back Kyle Hicks back, but only 2 offensive line starters. In the spring game, though, Kenny Hill, the transfer from Texas A&M, he was 9-20 for 75 yards, and Sawyer was 7-15 for 80 yards. So there might be some competition there. We'll see how that goes. The offense is ranked number 4th and 3rd in the nation in yards the last 2 years. The defense was 59th last year at 26 points per game allowed. The defense fell from number 8 in points allowed at number 29. The defensive line strong. Returning senior defensive end Josh Caraway, defensive tackle was Aaron Curry, and junior Chris Bradley. Linebacker strong there with junior linebacker Trayvon Howard and sophomore Montrell Wilson. 2 starters in the secondary return. The schedule, they start out with South Dakota State, then they play Arkansas, and then they have 5 road games at SMU, Kansas, West Virginia, Baylor, and Texas. They have that big revenge game. Actually, they have 2 revenge games. They have one against Oklahoma State and one against Houston. So those are 2 games to watch for. They're on 35-21 against the spread run at home the last 3 years. So as usual, I'm not sure if they can win 11 games again because they do have to replace a lot of players there. But I think 10 games would be I think they can win 10 games this year, John.
All right. There are several teams in the nation that are tremendous on offense with a lot of points, but they can't stop anybody. And this Texas Tech team in the Big 12 is one of them. They're off a season where they went 7-6, but a losing record in the Big 12. Fourth-year coach Cliff Kingsbury runs this dynamic offense. A lot of hope for this season with 9 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. But after starting 7-0 back in 2013, they're on a 12-19 straight-up run, 14-17 against the spread. No trouble scoring points, 10-3 over the total last year. But boy, haven't been able to stop anybody. That kind of looks like the mix for this season too. Start with the offense. You got junior quarterback Patrick Mahomes back, 36 touchdowns, 15 interceptions, 4,653 yards passing, and he can run too, 456 yards rushing and 10 rushing touchdowns too. This is an offense that was number 2 in the nation in passing, over 388 yards. They scored points, 45 points per game, was also second in the nation, and they can even run the football when they spread the field and run draw plays, 191 yards rushing per game. And there's plenty of talent back. They got the junior running back Justin Stockton, averaged 6 yards per carry, 367 yards. Keep this in mind, only 2 offensive line starters are back. But this team loves to pass the football, and there's just so many options. Ian Sadler is a junior wide receiver, third in yards with 596. You got 6'3" Derek Willis. He was a sought-after junior college prospect, and he chose Texas Tech. He originally signed with the Iowa Hawkeyes a few years ago. And then they got a newcomer in Daquan Bowman and T.J. Vasher, and then Dylan Cantrell comes back healthy. So a lot of experience and talented passing options. So this will be one of the best passing teams in the nation again. But boy, this defense is non-existent. 42.6 points per game, 125th in the nation. And they have their defensive coordinator back for a second year, David Gibbs, going to give him another shot. However, 3 defensive assistants were dismissed. Texas Tech numbers were just ugly across the board. 280.5 yards rushing allowed per game, easily worst in the Big 12, one of the worst in the nation. And despite that, they do have a terrific guy up front, a defensive tackle in Braden Fahoku. He's a sophomore. He had honorable mention in the All Big 12 as a defensive tackle. He was outstanding as a freshman last year, but he needs help. So they bringing in some newcomers from the JC ranks in Michaelan Thompson. You got Colin Hill, who's a transfer, and Andre Pipkins, but we just don't know about these guys. So there's some talent and depth, but a lot of big question marks. If there's any strength at all with the defense, it is in the secondary, as despite all the yards, they did force 25 turnovers, including 15 interceptions overall. Some of the key guys are back, including Jawan Johnson, who's a sophomore defensive back with 85 tackles. Now the schedule for the Red Raiders, big one in week 2 at Arizona State of the Pac-12, and then you got road games at Kansas State, at TCU, at Oklahoma State, and at Iowa State. Not really that bad. And then you got some home games against West Virginia, Oklahoma, Texas, and Baylor. The home schedule is actually a bit tougher. So I can see a winning record here, but boy, with that defense, can you see this team hitting 10 wins? No, I can't. Maybe 7-6 or 8-5. But of course, the way to look at this game is, although this team would be over the total. 10-3 over last year, part of a 26-14 run over the total. I don't see why that does not continue in 2016. All right, Kansas State Wildcats, you got Bill Snyder. Boy, this guy pulls rabbits out of the hats every year. What does he have in store, Jeff, for 2016?
Well, it doesn't look. Last year was a mediocre year, and it could be the same this year because they don't have a lot of offensive firepower there. Last year they're 6-7, 3-6 in the Big 12, 6-7 against the spread. They're 8-5 over the total of the last 13 games. They returned 6 on offense, 6 on defense. This year they're going to have a quarterback situation again. Joe Huebner took over last year for Jesse Ertz, who was injured, I think, in the first game. Huebner was only completed 47.6% of his passes. He was 9 TDs, 10 interceptions, 51.1 total quarterback rating. Not too good. And now Ertz is back. We'll see. Maybe he'll get his starting position back. Also, Alex Delton is also in the mix. So right now the quarterback situation is kind of iffy right now. They do have senior running back Charles Jones back. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry, 5 TDs last year. They went from 17th in the nation in passing 2 years ago to 108th last season. At wide receiver, they still have Dominique Heath and Deontay Burton. Defense, they were 90th last year in the country, allowing 30.3 points per game. Even though they're in the Big 12, that's not for a Bill Snyder team. That's not too characteristic of his teams. defensive tackle Will Geary, linebacker Elijah Lee, and quarterback Duke Shelley. They're all standouts, and so there is. I'm not sure if there'll be improvement on defense, but it shouldn't be much worse than last year. They open at Stanford, they're at West Virginia, they have Oklahoma, Iowa State, Baylor, and at TCU. Remember these games last year? They lost 55-0 at home to Oklahoma, 59-44 Texas Tech. Those you just don't see those scores with the Bill Snyder coach team anymore. So you might want to watch those games this year, see if they get any revenge. But I think they're going to be about the same as last year. Maybe 6 or 7 wins again, and even Bill Snyder, the great coach that he is, I don't think he can pull off many more wins than that this year, John.
All right, I'm going to take a look at the Iowa State Cyclones off a 3-9 season, but there are a lot of changes going on. First of all, Paul Rhodes is gone. The guy went to 3 bowls in 6 years with them, but it wasn't enough to keep his job. And it's too bad. I like this guy. He was a very good offensive mind. He got the most out of a lot of the players on offense. And a couple of years ago, they were a big dog to number 2 team in the nation, Oklahoma State, 21-point dog. They won the game in triple overtime. And even last year, 12-point dog to Oklahoma State. They lost 35-31. They had a 3-point loss to Kansas State and a close one. And then rival Iowa, they gave them a game but lost 31-17. They've still beaten Iowa 2 of the last 3 years. But the new coach here is highly heralded Matt Campbell. He comes over from Toledo. The last 4 years at Toledo, he was 35-15. 10-2 last year, where they beat Arkansas of the SEC as a 23-point dog, 16-12, and they even beat this Iowa State team 30-23. Now they have 7 starters back on offense, 7 on defense. The cupboard is certainly not bare for the new coaching staff. Iowa State averaged 25 points per game last year with very good balance, including 182 yards rushing per game. That was 48th in the country. They got junior quarterback Joel Lanning back, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and he's a very mobile quarterback, 330 yards rushing. And sophomore running back Mike Warren is back. This guy was dynamic as a freshman with 1,339 yards rushing, 5.9 yards per carry. And the wide receiver core is loaded with depth and talent. You got junior wide receiver Alan Lazard. He's been playing since his freshman campaign when he was very good. He had 808 yards last season. You got speedy senior Dondre Daly. And you got a highly touted 6'6" freshman tight end in Chase Allen. He could help an offensive line that only has 1 starter back. It's the defense that has had major problems the last few years for the Cyclones. 32.7 points per game, 97th in the nation. Had trouble stopping the run, and only 2 starters back on the defensive line. So that really is the starting point for the new coaching staff to kind of rebuild some depth on this defense. Depth has always been a problem for this team, as they can play competitive early on, but as they pick up injuries, the defense can wear it out down the stretch. And the secondary only had 5 interceptions last year, that tied with Kansas State for fewest in the Big 12, but they do have a lot of returning experience and talent. Kamari Cotton-Mayer, he was the Big 12 Freshman Defensive Player of the Year back in 2014. Only played half the season at safety last year because of injuries, but he's back. Cornerback Nigel Tribune has made 26 career starts, and they pick up a cornerback in Deandra Payne. He was originally with Tennessee of the SEC as a 4-star cornerback recruit. He is available to play. Now the schedule for Iowa State, not easy at all. They're at TCU, at Oklahoma State, at Texas, and at Kansas in the 4 road games. 3 of them difficult, and the home schedule is difficult too. They get Baylor, Kansas State, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, and West Virginia at home. And the team they don't like playing as far as matchups is Oklahoma. The last 3 years they've lost 48-10, 59-14, and 52-16. Now Iowa State is on a 14-9-1 run under the total, but I see that changing for this year because the offense is going to be very good, but the defense still has some problems. All right, Jeff, what's going on in Morgantown with West Virginia? They were 8-5 last year, and what were they in the Big 12?
Overall, 4-5 in the Big 12 and 5-8 against the spread. Overall, they had that big win against Arizona State, 43-42 in the Cactus Bowl as a 3-point favorite. Mountaineers were 35th in the country in scoring last year, 42nd in passing, 16th in rushing. Passing attack has been 10th, 34th, 9th, and 42nd in the nation in the last 4 years. Quarterback's going to be Skyler Howard. Last year he threw for 26 TDs, 14 interceptions, more than 3,100 yards, 54.8% completion rate. Had 532 yards racked up in the bowl game there. Running back, Rush Rochelle, 4.4 yards per carry. Wide receiver, they still have Shelton Gibson, DeKel Shorts, Jawan Durante. Those are three of the top four back there at the receiver position, and they have four starters back in the offensive line, including their senior center, Tyler Orlowski. So offensively, they should be fine again. Defensively, last year 39th in the country. They allowed 386 yards per game. Unique 3-3-5 defense means they don't always put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They lost their three top linebackers, and the secondary also lost its best players. So the defense would be the question mark this year for West Virginia. The schedule, at home they have Kansas State, TCU, Kansas, Oklahoma, Baylor. On the road they have Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Texas, Iowa State. Another tough Big 12 schedule for West Virginia, who's still adapting to that new conference. And it looks like once again they'll be, maybe 500, a little bit better in the conference, but they just can't seem to go to the next level there, John. So I look at West Virginia another maybe 8-5 season.
All right, coming up, the final place here in the Big 12 would be rebuilding Kansas, winless last year, 0-12, 3-9 against the spread. Dave Beatty begins his second year. This guy came from the Texas A&M program, good reputation of recruiting in the middle part of the country as well as the South down in Texas. But boy, he has a lot of work to do, and we saw it last year in his first season. The offense was dismal, 15.3 points per game. He returns 8 starters on offense, 8 on defense, as he had to play a lot of young kids. But they couldn't do much of anything. 69th in the nation with just 218 yards passing per game, and the running game was non-existent, 113. So, and he wants to have a wide open air raid attack too, but they've got some work to do. The sophomore quarterback Ryan Willis returns, but only 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. They have senior quarterback Montel Cozart. He's back. Limited action, 752 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He missed 8 games with an injury, but he does have 11 starts for this team, so there is experience. And they also have T.J. Millward. He's a senior and originally transferred from UCLA. Problem here, though, is there's really nothing around them. You got a junior running back in Kewan Kinner. 566 yards, not bad, but only 4.2 yards per carry. The skill position players are just below average. Levante Gonzalez would be really the focal point here. He didn't play last year, but he was originally signed by Texas A&M, and he transferred, joining the new coaching staff here. He will be eligible to play. He's a wide receiver. He'll be playing this fall. But even beyond him, you got Steven Sims as a sophomore wide receiver. He was second on the team, but just 349 yards. Sophomore tight end Kent Taylor had 179 yards, and he transferred from the SEC at Florida. So there's potential talent, but a lot of youth on this team. And then there's the defense for Kansas, just awful. 46.1 points per game, dead last in college football. They're also dead last in yards allowed, 561 yards per game. They got a junior linebacker in Joe Deneen, who's terrific, but he can't do it alone. He needs more help up front, and they need some bulk up front to try and stop the run. Secondary was really where they got some talent with Beze Bates and junior defensive end Anthony Oloba returns, but again, there's just too few here on the talent side of the ball. So I'm looking for Kansas to try and improve the offense first. I don't see this defense improving at all, especially with all these speed-oriented spread attacks in the Big 12. Now, they are on a 20-15 run under the total, but I would go the other way on this one. As a year ago, they were 7-5 over the total, and with this defense, that would be the way to look. The road games are not very good for this team. At Texas Tech, at Baylor, at Oklahoma, at West Virginia, Kansas State. So, no, a bowl game, forget about it. Just finding a couple of wins, maybe 1 or 2, would be the way to go for them. All right, that'll do it for the college football Big 12 version of Proline. We're going to be previewing all of the college football teams. You can find those on YouTube, Jim Feist sports betting page on YouTube, as well as jimfeist.com. If you want to get free plays sent right to your cell phone every day from Jim, just text GAME, GAME, to 25827. Plus, you can get plays from Jim and all the handicappers, including Jeff Sider runs Las Vegas Sports Service. You can find them all at jimfeist.com. All right, good luck with the games, everyone, from Las Vegas, and we'll see you next time on Proline.